Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Owen always believed he knew Harper better than anyone else in the world. 15 years as a paramedic had taught him to read people quickly, spot lies under pressure, and notice signs others missed. But apparently, all that experience hadn't helped him one bit when it came to his own wife. For 8 years of marriage, he'd fully believed in the transparency Harper preached, in their honest late-night conversations, and in the future they planned together. She always said secrets were poison to any relationship, and Owen completely agreed. That's why, when his niece Zoe showed up at his house that Thursday afternoon pale-faced and trembling, he couldn't immediately process what he was about to discover. Zoe was 17 and had always been close to Owen. She saw him as the cool uncle, the one who didn't judge, who really listened. So when she rang the doorbell at 3 in the afternoon, Owen opened the door smiling, expecting maybe a request for a ride or advice about some school drama. But her expression was different. Her eyes avoided his, and she bit her lower lip in a way Owen recognized as extreme anxiety. He invited her in, offered her water, and waited. Zoe sat on the living room couch, staring fixedly at her phone as if it might explode in her hands. "Uncle Owen, I need to show you something," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to have to do this, I swear. I thought hard about whether I should or shouldn't, but I can't stay quiet. It wouldn't be fair to you." Owen felt the first knot tighten in his stomach, that instinctive sense that something was terribly wrong. He moved closer and sat beside his niece. Zoe took a deep breath before handing him her phone, already open to the photos on the screen. What Owen saw in those images made the world around him blur for a few seconds. There were 3 photos. In the first, Harper sat on a couch Owen instantly recognized, laughing with a glass of wine in her hand. Beside her, dangerously close, was a dark-haired woman with a short haircut whom Owen also recognized, though he'd only seen her 2 or 3 times in his life, Victoria, a former college classmate of Harper's. The second photo showed the 2 women even closer, Victoria's hand on Harper's face in a gesture that left no doubt about their intimacy. The third photo was more explicit, showing them kissing, completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to the rest of the world. What made it infinitely worse was the location where the photos were taken. Owen knew every detail of that living room, the paintings on the wall, every piece of furniture. It was the lakeside cabin that had belonged to his parents, located 2 hours away in the mountains. The house that now stood empty, waiting to be put up for sale. "How did you get these photos?" Owen asked, surprised he could keep his voice steady. Zoe quickly explained that a friend of hers worked at the flower shop that made deliveries around that area. She'd found it strange to see 2 women repeatedly entering and leaving a property that everyone in the neighborhood knew was empty and up for sale. Just in case, thinking it might be trespassing, she'd taken some distant photos. Later, unaware of the connection, she'd shown them to Zoe. When Zoe saw the images and recognized Harper, she froze. She spent 2 sleepless nights trying to decide what to do. She feared destroying her uncle's marriage, but she also knew that staying silent would leave Owen living inside a lie. Her decision to tell him hadn't been impulsive, it was an act of courage after much reflection. Owen thanked his niece, asked her to send him the photos, and gently dismissed her, saying he needed some time alone. When the door closed behind her, he sat back down on the couch, staring at the images now on his own phone. His mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The vacation house. Harper had taken the keys about 4 months ago, saying she wanted to start preparing the place for realtors, sorting through his parents' belongings still there, doing minor renovations to increase the sale value. Owen had thought it was kind of her, especially since he himself didn't have the heart to deal with a space filled with memories. She said she'd go there on weekends, sometimes during the week when she had a free day from her freelance graphic design work. Owen had never questioned it, never suspected a thing. Now, looking at the photos, he realized how naive he'd been. How many times had Harper said she was helping a friend move or doing field research for a project? How many nights had she come home slightly flushed, saying she'd had wine with a client? Owen felt anger begin to simmer, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. He was trained for emergencies, for staying calm under pressure. He needed to think clearly. He grabbed his laptop and started checking the dates when Harper had said she'd be at the house. She shared a Google Calendar with him where she marked both professional and personal commitments. He scrolled through the past 4 months, noting every entry labeled Vacation House, Organizing. There were 12 entries. 12 times she deliberately lied. Owen decided not to confront Harper right away. First, he needed to confirm the photos weren't some absurd misunderstanding, though his gut told him there was no mistake possible. He called the security company that monitored the house and went through an identity verification process, answering authentication questions and confirming his ownership of the property. Only then did support send him the electronic lock report. The document showed the house had been accessed 53 times in the past 4 months, always using Harper's access code. 53 times. Far more than the 12 she'd logged in their shared calendar. Owen closed his eyes, trying to control the wave of nausea that hit him. That evening, when Harper came home around 7, Owen was sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop still open in front of him. She walked in smiling, giving him a quick kiss on the forehead as she always did, commenting about the awful traffic. Owen responded in monosyllables, watching her every move. Harper seemed completely normal, even relaxed. She made dinner, chatting about a new client she'd landed and how the project would be challenging but exciting. Owen ate mechanically, every bite tasted like cardboard. When she casually mentioned she'd need to go to the vacation house on Saturday to finish organizing the attic, Owen simply nodded. "Want me to come with you this time?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. Harper hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering, and Owen caught the tension that flickered across her face. "No need, love. I know you hate going through your parents' things. I'll finish it for you." Owen forced a smile. "Are you sure? It's not fair to leave it all on your shoulders." Harper laughed, a sound that now rang false to his ears. "I'm sure. Besides, you're on shift Saturday, right?" She was right. He was. Or rather, he had been, until 5 minutes ago, when he decided to swap shifts with a colleague. On Friday night, Owen confirmed with a coworker that they'd cover his shift. He told Harper he'd have to work all day and would leave early. Saturday morning, he really did leave at 6, but instead of heading to the hospital, he drove straight to the vacation house. The 2-hour drive felt like an eternity. His mind swung between hoping this was all one enormous misunderstanding and the growing certainty that his life was about to change irreversibly. He arrived at the property at 8:30 and parked his car about 500 meters away, hidden by a curve in the dirt road. He walked toward the house along the side trail he'd known since childhood, positioning himself where he could see the front door but remain hidden among the trees. At 10:20, Harper's car appeared on the road. Owen watched his wife get out, walk to the door, and enter the access code into the electronic lock. She went inside, and for 40 minutes nothing happened. Owen started to feel ridiculous, like one of those paranoid husbands he'd always judged. But then, at 11, a second car showed up. It was a black sedan Owen didn't recognize. The woman who stepped out of it, however, was unmistakable. Victoria. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, her short hair perfectly styled. She didn't hesitate as she approached the house, clearly familiar with the place. She rang the doorbell once, and Harper opened the door almost immediately. What Owen saw next confirmed all his worst suspicions. Harper pulled Victoria inside, and through the window he could see them hugging, then kissing with an intensity that made his heart physically ache. Owen waited another 30 minutes, giving them time to settle in, before moving closer. Each step toward the house of his childhood felt like it weighed tons. He'd rehearsed mentally what he'd say, how he'd stay calm, but now that the moment had arrived, all his words felt inadequate. He didn't ring the bell. He simply entered his own code into the lock and opened the door. The sound led him straight to the living room, where Harper and Victoria sat on the couch, wine glasses in hand, laughing about something. Their laughter died the instant they saw Owen standing in the doorway. Harper's face lost all color. Victoria, on the other hand, just looked mildly annoyed, as if Owen were an inconvenient interruption. "Owen," Harper whispered, setting her glass down so quickly wine splashed onto the coffee table. "What are you doing here?" Owen laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Interesting. I could ask you the same thing, but I think I already know the answer. The better question is, how long has this been going on?" Harper stood up, her hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. "Owen, let me explain. Please, it's not what you think." Victoria stood too, but her demeanor was completely different. She crossed her arms, her chin raised in what looked like defiance. "Actually," she said, her voice surprisingly calm, "it's exactly what he thinks, Harper. There's no point lying now." Owen finally felt the anger explode. 53 times, he said, staring directly at Harper. "You used that house's access code 53 times in the last 4 months. 53 times you lied to me, came here with her." He gestured toward Victoria, unable to look at the other woman. "How many of those times did you tell me you were working? Or helping some imaginary friend? Or doing anything other than this?" Harper started crying, tears streaming freely down her face. "I'm so sorry. I swear I am. I never wanted to hurt you." Owen took a step forward, and Harper instinctively flinched back. He stopped immediately, realizing she thought he might hit her. The thought disgusted him. "I'd never lay a hand on you," he said, his voice low but firm. "No matter what you've done. But you owe me an explanation. A real one, not this 'it's not what you think' nonsense." It was Victoria who spoke first. "Sit down, Owen. This is going to take a while." There was something in her tone that made Owen hesitate, a layer of complexity he hadn't expected. He pulled up a chair and sat, arms crossed. Harper remained standing, wiping her tears with the backs of her hands. Victoria sat back down on the couch, composing herself with a sip of wine before she began. "Harper and I met in college, as you know," Victoria started. "What you don't know is that we weren't just friends. We were in a relationship for 3 years. A serious relationship, Owen. We lived together our last year. We planned a future together." Owen looked at Harper, who lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. He felt as if the floor were vanishing beneath him. "So you're a lesbian?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Harper shook her head. "Bisexual, I think. I don't even know anymore." Victoria continued, relentless. "Harper's family is ultra-conservative. Extremely religious. When they found out about us, it was hell. Her family put intense emotional pressure on her to end the relationship. For months they tried to correct who she was, a trauma that marked her deeply. Eventually, Harper gave in. She broke up with me, moved back home, and a few years later met you." Owen felt bile rise in his throat. "So our entire marriage was a lie? You only married me to please your family?" Harper finally found her voice. "No. It wasn't like that. Owen, I loved you. I still love you, in a way. You're kind, stable, everything I thought I needed. But," she hesitated, searching for the right words. "But you never stopped loving her," Owen finished, gesturing toward Victoria. Harper nodded, more tears falling. "I tried. I swear I tried to forget. For years I managed. But then Victoria reappeared 6 months ago, and it all came rushing back." Owen turned to Victoria. And you? What do you get out of this? Does destroying a marriage amuse you? Victoria paused, and for the first time her expression showed something other than coldness. At first, I just reconnected. Nostalgic texts, casual meetups, trying to reconnect with Harper. But when she tried to pull away, when she said she had a life now, that she was married, something in me broke. She grabbed her phone and started scrolling through her photo gallery. The photos I have of us, hundreds from college and now, were just memories at first. But then I started using them differently. First subtle hints, then direct threats to expose everything to her family. That's when the financial threats began. The shock on Owen's face must have been obvious, because Victoria looked away. That's right, Owen. It's illegal coercion. I'm not just the other woman, I've been exploiting this situation. Harper's been coming here not just because she wants to, though that's part of it, but because I'm forcing her. She's already transferred almost $30,000 from your joint account to me over the past 4 months. Small amounts you wouldn't notice, but they add up. Owen looked at Harper, searching for denial, for any sign Victoria was lying. But Harper just covered her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. It's true, she whispered through her tears. I didn't know what to do. She said she'd ruin my life, my career, my relationship with my family. I panicked. She lifted her face, eyes red and swollen. I couldn't ask for help because I was ashamed of my past, scared of my family's reaction, and terrified of losing the one relationship I thought I'd built on stability. I felt like any revelation would destroy everything, and so, precisely because of that, I chose to hide it even when it no longer made sense. The anger Owen felt was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. It wasn't just Harper's betrayal that consumed him, but Victoria's cruel manipulation, the utter disrespect from them both. He stood up, walking to the window to gather his thoughts. His paramedic brain, trained for emergencies, finally kicked in. He needed to assess the situationally, weigh all options, decide the best course of action. $30,000, he repeated, turning to face them. You stole $30,000 from me, Harper. From our money. Money we saved together. Harper tried to approach him, but Owen raised his hand, stopping her. No. You don't get to touch me right now. He looked at Victoria. And you think you can keep taking money from us indefinitely? Victoria shrugged. Why not? Harper has a lot to lose. And now you do too, Owen. After all, what kind of man lets his wife get blackmailed? What kind of man doesn't notice he's being robbed right under his own nose? Imagine what your colleagues would say. The paramedic who can't even keep his own house in order. The jab was calculated to wound, and it did. But Owen didn't take the bait. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started dialing. What are you doing? Harper asked, alarmed. Owen ignored her, waiting for the call to connect. Hello, Ashford County Sheriff's Office? My name is Owen Mitchell. I'm calling to report an ongoing case of financial coercion. Victoria jumped to her feet, her face finally showing real emotion, fear. You can't do that, she yelled. The photos will leak anyway. Owen covered the phone's microphone. Do whatever you want with the photos, Victoria. Harper will have to face the consequences of her own choices. But you won't keep stealing from me. I can promise you that. He returned to the call, giving the address and basic details about what was happening. When he hung up, he turned to Harper. You have 2 options. You can cooperate with the police, admit you were coerced, and testify against her, or you can choose to protect the person who put you in this mess and face charges as an accomplice. Your choice. Harper was hysterical now, alternating between begging for forgiveness and panicking about the police arriving. Victoria made moves as if to leave, but Owen positioned himself in front of the door, keeping his distance. He firmly, but without aggression, asked her to wait for the police, reminding her that fleeing would only make things worse. Victoria, realizing she was cornered and that running would only worsen her situation, returned to the couch, arms crossed in furious silence. The roughly 40 minutes until the police arrived were the longest of Owen's life, just about as long as it took to drive to the property. Harper kept trying to explain, to make Owen understand the pressure she was under, the fear she felt. But every word just deepened the wound. It wasn't just the sexual betrayal that hurt, though that was devastating. It was the systematic lying, the manipulation, the theft. It was the realization that the woman he'd shared 8 years of his life with was a complete stranger. When the officers finally arrived, Owen gave all the details clearly and concisely. He showed the bank transfers in the banking app and presented the threatening messages Victoria had sent Harper, messages Harper had saved in a separate email out of fear. After hearing from all parties and reviewing the evidence, the officers took Victoria in for formal questioning. Harper wasn't arrested, but she was told she'd need to give a detailed statement in the coming days. When they were alone again in the house, the silence was deafening. Harper made one last attempt. "Owen, please. I know I ruined everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But there was so much pressure, so much fear. I didn't know what to do." Owen looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months. He saw a broken, frightened, lost woman. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to hold her like he used to. But the larger part, the part still bleeding from betrayal, knew that would be a mistake. "You could have told me the truth," he said calmly. "At any point during these 8 years, you could have been honest with me, about who you really are, what you really want, about Victoria when she reappeared. But you chose to lie, again and again. And when you had the chance to stop the blackmail, when you could have come to me so we could get help together, you chose to steal from me and keep lying." He paused, making sure every word was weighed. "I would have helped you, Harper. Even if you'd told me about Victoria, about the affair, I would have helped you deal with the blackmail. Because that's what partners do. But you took that choice away from me. And now, I can't trust a single word that comes out of your mouth." Harper collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Owen picked up the house keys from the table where she'd left them. "I'll file for divorce on Monday. You can stay in the house for now. I'll go to a hotel. My lawyer will be in touch." He walked to the door, pausing once to look back. "And Harper? Whatever decision you make about your sexuality, your family, your life, I hope this time you're honest. At least with yourself." The following months were a bureaucratic and emotional fog. The case against Victoria for financial coercion moved quickly. With the evidence Owen and Harper provided, she accepted a guilty plea deal, receiving 2 years in prison and an order to repay the stolen money. Harper fully cooperated with the prosecution, which worked in her favor, but the story inevitably leaked. As expected, her family cut off all contact. Several of her conservative clients cancelled contracts. But Harper also found a supportive LGBTQ+ community that welcomed her, and slowly began rebuilding her life more authentically. The divorce was finalized unusually fast, given their mutual agreement on all terms. Owen kept most of the joint assets, considering the documented theft. The vacation house was finally put up for sale, and Owen used part of the proceeds to make a significant donation to an organization that supports victims of financial coercion and threats. It felt appropriate. 9 months after that fateful Saturday at the Mountain House, Owen was at a cafe near the hospital where he worked when he saw Harper for the first time since signing the divorce papers. She was with a group of friends, laughing at something someone had said. Her hair was shorter now, dyed a reddish shade she'd always wanted to try but never had the courage for. She wore bolder, more colorful clothes. Against all odds, she looked genuinely happy. Their eyes met across the cafe. The encounter was accidental, but this time Owen realized something different: he was ready. He didn't feel the weight that had accompanied him through the divorce. There was no anger, no longing, just a quiet acceptance that this chapter of his life had ended the way it needed to. Harper hesitated, clearly unsure whether to approach. Owen gave a small, neutral wave of acknowledgement. She walked over to his table, hands in her pockets, defensive posture. "Hi, Owen," she said softly. "Hi, Harper. Are you okay?" She nodded. "I am. Better than I've been in a long time, actually." "And you?" Owen considered the question. Was he okay? He'd been in intensive therapy, working through the betrayal and trauma. He'd been on a few dates, though nothing serious yet. He'd reconnected with friends he'd neglected. He'd even adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Buddy, who waited for him every night with unconditional enthusiasm. "I'm getting there," he answered honestly. "One day at a time." Harper gave a faint smile. "I'm really sorry, you know. For everything. You didn't deserve any of this." Owen took a sip of coffee, choosing his words carefully. "No, I didn't. But I also learned a lot, about myself, about what I really want in a relationship, about the importance of radical honesty. So, in a strange way, thank you." Harper looked surprised. "Thank you?" Owen nodded. "For freeing me from a lie. It wouldn't have been fair to either of us to keep going like that. You would have been miserable forever, and I would have lived with someone who could never fully be herself with me. Now, we both get a chance to find something real." He paused. "Are you seeing someone?" Harper blushed slightly. "I'm getting to know someone. A woman. It's new, but it's honest. Completely honest from the start. At least I learned that lesson." Owen felt a pang that might have been jealousy, but it was quickly replaced by genuine relief. "I'm happy for you, Harper. Really. Everyone deserves to be who they truly are." They talked for a few more minutes, catching up on surface-level details of their lives. When Harper said goodbye and returned to her friends, Owen watched her go, feeling a strange sense of closure. It wasn't happiness, exactly, but it wasn't the sharp pain he'd carried for months either. It was acceptance. It was peace. That night, Owen sat in the small patio of his new apartment, Buddy lying at his feet. He thought about the journey of the past months, how his life had been turned upside down by 3 photos on his niece's phone. He thought about how he'd stayed calm as his world collapsed, how he'd chosen the law over personal vengeance, how he'd given Harper a chance to redeem herself even when she didn't deserve it. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Zoe, "Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. I know it wasn't easy for you. You saved me from years of lies. I'll always be grateful." The reply came almost instantly, "I love you, Uncle. You deserve someone who loves you for real, with no secrets. That person will show up." Owen smiled, putting his phone away. Maybe Zoe was right. Maybe there was someone out there who could love him fully, honestly, without reservation. But even if there wasn't, he'd learned something valuable. He didn't need someone else to feel whole. He had his integrity, his career, his loyal dog, his supportive family. He'd faced one of the worst betrayals possible and come out the other side stronger, wiser, more self-aware. Owen realized that while Harper had broken his trust, it was Zoe who'd really saved him that day, with the truth, however painful. He finally understood he'd rather have a devastating truth than a lifetime built on lies. And it was from that clarity that his new freedom was born. Owen's life was no longer the comfortable fantasy he'd thought he shared with Harper. It was more complicated, more uncertain, but it was real. And for the first time in a long while, he was at peace with that. The future was open, full of possibilities he could barely imagine. And now, whatever path he chose, he'd build a life that was solid and true. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Owen closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The cool air filled his lungs, reminding him he was alive, that he'd survived, that he'd keep surviving. And for today, that was enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.